Before we begin, viewer discretion is advised. This episode contains discussions of attempted suicide, child abuse, sexual assault, and other sensitive topics that may be distressing to some viewers. Please take care while watching and step away if you need to. If you or someone you know is struggling, support is available through your local helpline. Resources will be listed in the description below.
I want my readers to know that they have more power and more control over their lives than what they may realize.
Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Daily Humans podcast. I'm Nina.
And I'm Ashley.
And today we're joined by Adriene Caldwell, author of the upcoming book, Unbroken, Life Outside the Lines, releasing December 1st in Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and Google Book. Adriene's book is a powerful account of childhood trauma, resilience, and finding light in some of the darkest places. We're honored to have her here with us today to share more about her journey and what it means to live unbroken. Hello, Adriene. How are you? Thank you so much for joining our podcast.
Hi, Nina, Ashley, ladies. It's a privilege to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, I am Adriene Caldwell, author of Unbroken, Life Outside the Lines. And it's the story of my life from early childhood to early 20s. And during this time, I was either the witness to or the victim of, and this is my trigger warnings in the book, the sexual assault of a young girl, the drowning death of a child, emotional and physical abuse, extreme poverty, mental illness, homelessness, horrifically abusive foster care, bulimia, drug and alcohol addiction, pedophilia, death, suicide, and even incest. So it covers quite the gamut, Unbroken does. But ultimately, it is a story about hope and resilience and triumphing against just tremendous adversity.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Something that I did want to kind of like open up with, because these are things that you've experienced and things you've witnessed, and they are so impactful, not just to our mental health, but also our nervous system and everything else involved. My question is, how were you able to put all your experiences into this book? Like, what was the writing process like? Was it relieving to finally share your story with the world, or is it something you're still working through? Like, what, if you could maybe share the process of it all?
Sure. I'll be very honest with you, ladies. It was hell. Writing this book, it's taken me 4 years, and it's been absolute hell. And even now, when it's time to edit or review the manuscript, it still takes effort and, effort to be calm and relax and to be able to go into the subject matter. Because for the past 25, 30 years, I have been an expert level at compartmentalizing and repressing things down. I like to say that I put all of my trauma in boxes, and these metaphorical boxes go on the metaphorical shelf that's behind the metaphorical door, and that's where they live. And writing this has meant that I've had to take each one out and open that box up and look at it and relive it. I would love to say that I would write this book again without hesitation and a heartbeat, but that would be a lie. If I knew what I was getting into 4 years ago, I can't say with 100% certainty that I would do it again, because it has been such a brutal, brutal journey. And my husband is very ready for me to be done with it because he wants his happy, chirpy, cheerful, rah, 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 Adrienne, not the, I just relived the story of being homeless after fourth grade,
Yeah.
not that version, which he's amazing. He's a rock. He's my rock, but it's been very challenging. And I would encourage anyone who's thinking about writing their story to really make sure that they have some safety nets put in place, that they have some coping mechanisms already identified, de-stressors, because if you're going to relive your traumas, you should absolutely have a plan in place for how you're going to deal with it. And I didn't, and I kind of learned that the hard way. So, yeah, just that little nugget of wisdom. I wish I had paid more attention in the beginning to other writers and specifically other memoir writers. So sorry, that was a very long answer to a very simple question.
No, that was absolutely very well said because you're right. When you experience everything that you've experienced, it's not easy to come back and reopen those, like you said, metaphorical boxes. Our brains want to protect ourselves and we want to kind of just separate ourselves from what happened and move forward. But this is why I asked, I could only imagine that it was very difficult to do so. And I'm glad that you're still keeping on with it, that you're still, fighting to have your voice be heard because it is important and this needs to be shared. Absolutely.
Thank you. That's
Yeah.
ultimately what has kept me going. That I will consider my book a success, not based on sales figures, but my mark or my definition of success for the book is if I truly, profoundly impact one person's life, then I think it will have been worth it. If I can change one person's life, which is a big ask. It's not easy for people to change. So yeah, we'll see. I hope that it is a beacon of hope. So many reasons why I wrote it. Please, Ashley.
So I'm sure it will be. The title and even what you've spoken about so far is something that I think a lot of people will relate to, as I said, in their own ways. And being heard, even though the story might not be the same, feeling heard by someone else's story is so impactful. It truly is. And even the guidance that you shared before someone decides to even write their own book on a story, I think is really important to be aware that it's quite tedious to go back to such difficult and traumatic times and write that out on paper. And it's you and that book, So I think it's really the guidance that you gave is so important as well. And I do think a lot of people are going to hear that.
Thank you. Thank you. So
Brings us to the next question that we'd love to ask you. And that is, with so much hardship at such an early age, how do you think your perspective on resilience and survival has changed since those early years?
So not many people know this, but the body itself tries to keep itself alive. And even when the person consciously no longer wants to be alive, when a person's contemplating suicide, attempting suicide, the body will actually try to save itself. I don't know that my perspective has really changed that much. I guess from being suicidal and desperately wanting the pain to end. I mean, I was no longer consciously operating, But in my mind, in my even subconscious self, that's how desperate I was for the pain to stop, the pain of living, of being alive, that I had a suicide attempt during a blackout period. And I think that my views on survival are very much that it is a decision that you make, that you come to terms with, that you are going to survive what you are currently going through, and then that you are empowered to make choices that improve your life, or choices that are going to um, sabotage yourself. So I think it's being very aware of the power that you have around your own life. And I think of teens especially, that they're not in complete control of their lives. They have authority figures dictating to them. And my book is not for teenagers. It should not be read by teenagers. But my message to those people who feel trapped, who feel like they have no control over their own life, is that in a very short period of time, your situation can change. So for the teenagers, 3, 4 years, you'll be making your own decisions on how you want to live. You'll be deciding if you want to self-medicate with drugs and alcohol and continue living in horrific life situations, or if you want to take control and power back over your life and make positive decisions. Be that, for someone who's in foster care, getting out of the system, going into the military, or taking advantage of tuition-free college, that that survival is very much a choice, and we have more power than what we might initially think. And our control over our thoughts and how we view ourselves and our situation is going to determine whether we continue having a really shitty life experience, or whether you start making those hard decisions and making positive steps and put yourself on track for a better life. Sorry. I like long answers. Sorry.
And we love hearing them. No, that is, it made me kind of emotional just listening to you, because I agree. Ashley and I have our own, histories with stuff, but it is very hard to get to a point when you've had childhood trauma to then realize later on, okay, I can actually make a decision. I can actually choose different than the people I've seen growing up, or the choices I've had friends in the past make, et cetera, et cetera. I get to create my own life.
Exactly.
And it is such like a massive shift, and it takes so much courage and so much strength. And it is really, it's tough work, but it is possible. And
Empowering, even.
yeah, yeah. I guess I would like to ask you, when was your moment when you had that, when you were like, okay, I get to be better or choose better? Was there a person in your life that showed that to you, or is it something that was created from self, that started from self?
So for me, it was the experience. You both have read the prologue, which is and I'll just share with the audience. It's my suicide attempt where I used a gun and I did
Yeah.
pull the trigger. You ladies haven't had a chance to read is the epilogue, which is the second half of that story, where I'm in a psychiatric hospital. It's that evening, and I have this experience where all of a sudden I I have this serenity, this peace that just comes over me. I'm laying on the floor in a dark room, no one else is around, and I have this epiphany that my work, my purpose on this planet has not been achieved, and that I will not be allowed to leave until I have achieved my purpose. And the suicide attempt with the gun was the last suicide attempt I ever tried, because I did have this moment, this revelation that there was something for me to do on this world. Now, unfortunately, it didn't come with like a memo saying, do XYZ, ta-da.
Yeah.
Um, it, I didn't have that, but I do like to say that the first half of my life, the first 20 years of my life, I wasn't really a good person. And I've spent the second half of my life really trying to make up for that. I've made amends with the people that I hurt, as much as I could. I've acknowledged my role and responsibility. In fact, in the book, Unbroken, I received feedback from my beta readers saying, hey, you don't really portray yourself in the most positive light. You might want to change it because you're kind of looking like a villain here. And my response to that feedback was no, I'm not changing it. There were times when I was the villain, where I was making hurtful decisions, and decisions that were negatively impacting other people. And that is as much a part of my story as when I did things right, when I got things right. So even though it makes me look bad on occasion, I'm not the perfect protagonist in my story, because authenticity is so important to me. So,
Yeah.
I was just going to say, we've had a few conversations about accountability and responsibility on our own journeys in healing. And I wanted to ask you a question. What did it feel like for you to get to that point of realizing and awakening to self, and then making the amends with self and others?
so it started probably about 7 years ago, even before the book, where I realized that I needed to make amends. And it's not part of a 12-step process. You know, I have addiction issues. I am an alcoholic. I was a drug addict, but I don't follow that. I make the decision. I only do drugs that have my name on them. I do not drink. The end. So it was incredibly cathartic, painful, because I had to acknowledge that there were people that I used, that I manipulated, that I hurt. One of my little catchy phrases is, I tried on men the way other women try on clothes. And I went from one man to the next, to whoever could take care of me and provide me with a lifestyle. So if I found someone new who made more money, or um, I would move on from one to the other. And realizing it took having my own daughter before I realized that I needed to be able to provide for myself, that I needed to be able to take care of myself completely, and to be that role model for her. But 7 years ago is when I started reaching out. I've written letters, I've sent messages on Facebook Messenger saying, owning my culpability in the bad decisions that I made. And I didn't expect forgiveness. That wasn't part of it. I was doing what I felt was needed to let the other person know that I I was in the wrong, and I hurt you, and I am sorry, and that I am trying to do better in my life now. And one family that I hurt, I wrote a letter to the mother and I apologized because I destroyed their family. And I didn't include my return address. I just said how sorry I was, and not giving explanations or rationalizations, just acknowledging the pain that I caused and letting them know that I know it was wrong and that I am sorry for it. And it's been ultimately cathartic for me. And as I said, I don't expect forgiveness. Some of the things I've done, I don't think are forgivable, but it was still my burden to try to make amends, to reach out and apologize.
Wow. That is really admirable. I do have to say, because we, at least from what I've seen and what I've encountered, a lot of people lack, unfortunately, the ability to stand in front of their mistakes and be like, hey, I apologize. Not excusing what happened or this is why it happened, but just standing in front of it all and just being like, okay, I did something wrong here. It's time to like make amends, as you said yourself. Wow. You're incredibly brave. I do have to say this. And even reading the prologue, your writing is impeccable and so expressive. And I could feel every single emotion that you were putting into your writing. And so even though it's been hard to put it all onto paper, I do just want to say thank you again for writing your book and sharing your story and even coming on to this podcast and talking about everything, because it is not easy to be, how can I say this, or how can I convey it? It's not easy to choose more or choose better or choose something different for yourself and then live in that light.
You're right. You're right. It is challenging. It is. But it's also the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So
I would like to move on to something that I think is very, very interesting and also I think shows light to your authenticity and transparency. On your website, you've made your case files available for people to read, which is incredibly vulnerable and open. And my question is, why was that important to you to be this transparent?
it's a great question. And there's not one single answer. Part of me, my knee jerk reaction was, it's proof. Everything that I say happened in my story, I have proof that I'm not lying. So, because I know that what I claim to have gone through is a lot, and I expect there will be people who have doubts. And as one of my beta readers wrote, because I include my psychiatric evaluation at the end of the book, she wrote, "Nobody can say you're not telling the truth because you've got receipts." So I liked that. But it was for more than just proof. It was to help my readers understand where I was at. So not only are there my Children's Protective Services case files, there's the psychiatric evaluation that's at the end of the book. I've got a second one. There are also letters that I wrote to my best friend, and it's an opportunity to see where my 15-year-old self was at when I was writing these letters to my CPS caseworker or to my best friend. It's another view. So, and my third answer, and so my primary audience is anyone who has struggled or gone through pain in their life, trying to be a beacon of hope for them. But I would love for my book, which is a firsthand account of childhood trauma, many, many childhood traumas. I would love for it to be used in classes, students of psychology or counseling focusing on early childhood trauma. And this wasn't my idea originally. I told my psychiatrist of 15 years that I was writing my life story, and she asked for my manuscript. This was years ago, 5 years ago. And I sent her an 81-page document that said, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. And then she asked me if her intern could read it. And after the intern was done, the intern came back to me a couple of different points, and said, this really gave me a better understanding of firsthand childhood trauma, what it's like from the child's perspective. It really helped me understand. And she even went so far as to tell me that it helped her choose her career path, what she was focusing on. And so to go back to the document on the website, the book is the firsthand account of the childhood trauma. The documents are the clinical perspective, what the therapist thought, what the psychiatrist thought, what the foster parent, the reports that she was writing. So I'm actually having my document, which you were online, they're handwritten, a lot of them. This was early 90s, so computers, internet wasn't quite their age. I'm having them transcribed, and I will compile a companion book to go along with Unbroken, Life Outside the Lines, specifically for students and professors who are looking for that firsthand document, plus the clinical perspective, which I don't think that's really out there. I don't know I haven't studied psychology or counseling. I don't know for a fact. But when the second intern said it helped her as well, that's when it kind of dawned on me. This might be my secondary audience, the academic arena. So that was another motivation for putting those documents out there. So now how to get my book and the companion documents into the curriculum and into the classroom, I'm not sure about all of that. Right now I'm thinking just emails and, sending them the book with the companion text, but we'll see. But when the interns told me how helpful and beneficial it was to them, that's when I realized that, hey, this might actually be something for them as well. So
Do you think that there is a disconnect between the academic, medical side of just psychiatry, therapy, childhood trauma, all of that, and the actual lived experience?
I think it's very, very hard for people who have not experienced those firsthand traumas to really understand. And if I can help them to better understand, if I can put them in a position so that they're better able to help children who've gone through things similar that I have, I would love to do that.
Yeah.
So I do think there is some disconnect, and I hope there is. I hope that most people don't go through everything that I've gone through. So
Well, hopefully, we can all use what you've applied in terms of your book, and then the a companion book as well, to create better systems and better ways to help children and everybody who is affected by abuse and sexual assault and homelessness and everything in between, because it is so necessary and so just needed in this society with everything that's going on, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I would like to say that uh, our society needs to do a better job of taking care of children of trauma. The caseworkers, social workers are significantly underpaid, overworked, that we're not giving them the appropriate support that they need to be able to reach those children who have been in harm's way. And I think we can do a lot better. And I'm in the US. Ashley, I know you're in Australia. Would you agree that um there needs to be change? There needs to be more support for the people trying to take care of the children who've gone through those situations.
100. I am a mental health practitioner, and
Oh,
the disconnect, I think, between human understanding of the human experience and the many different experiences is there, because obviously when we're living in our own experience within that space, and then we may hear other stories, but when you're in the field of human and you're a counselor, a psychologist, a therapist, it's the thing of you're going to hear so many other different experiences. How do you step forward to that, especially with children? The vulnerability is so there as a child, and they've soaked up so much of the external. So how do you, as an adult, hold space for the child who has soaked all this up and has no potential idea as to what they've soaked up and what to do with it and how to feel about it? They're a child. So I do truly believe that expansion does need to happen on a widespread in many different countries.
in your opinion, Ashley, do you think the documents between the book and the documents, do you think it would actually be helpful since you are a mental health professional? Do you think it
100%.
really? Okay. So I'm not just out here in left field. Okay.
I think it's really important because of that expansion. Like your story, just like many others, you give people if they've known life to be through one box, as an example, maybe they've had experience with homelessness, as an example, right? Then they hear your story and they hear the expansions from that as to, oh, so this and this is how she got here, and then it moved from here. So it gives people this awareness of there is more than just this one side of it. There is so much more to it for other people. And I think, as you were talking about, hearing that as professionals just gives that realization of, I just think it's really important for the mental health field to know as many experiences as possible
Okay.
for us to expand our support and guidance. So, yeah.
Okay. Got it. So,
You've shared in your book so far, at least from what we've read, that you grew up in a military family dynamic where rules and order shaped a lot of your daily life. And moving often meant relying heavily on family bonds. With everything you've went through, how do you think that shaped your sense of belonging and connection when the origins weren't always, let's say, positive or healthy?
so my grandfather was career military and the family moved. So it was my grandfather, grandmother, and their 4 children. Um, and they moved every 3 to 4 years. And what that does to you is it teaches you not to invest too much in external relationships. that you're going to have the societal courtesies and etiquette, waving in the front lawn, um, but you don't invest a lot in other people because you're going to leave them. And what that does in my family, it created the sense that if you're family, there's nothing we won't do for you. If you're not in our inner circle, you can take a long walk off a short bridge. And that's not necessarily the healthiest, because it doesn't prepare you for healthy friendships and getting support outside the family. But I like to tell this story. I was at my aunt and uncle's house, and my mother, she was schizophrenic, physically abusive. We weren't able to live on our own. She didn't have a career. We were too poor. She was too ill. We ended up bouncing between two sets of aunts and uncles repeatedly throughout my childhood. And there's a story where I'm at Aunt Rose and Uncle John's house, and phone rings. I answer it, and Uncle John says, "Come down to the gas station." And I say, "Okay." And I hang up the phone and I get in the car and I go down to the gas station. And once I get there, he says, my car died. I need a battery jump. But that example illustrates how it was very much order given, order obeyed. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now what? That's not necessarily in my family. Well, first off, they don't believe in mental illness, which to me is insane. It's insane not to believe in mental illness. My grandfather was schizophrenic. My mother developed schizophrenia around the time that she had me. I have a cousin who is schizophrenic. It's very much in my family, but they don't talk about the past. My uncle's famous quote for his father, who sexually abused my mother, is that if he ever saw the F word again, effer again, he would effing kill him. And he was absolutely sincere in it. But being that tight knit, that close, it has its advantages. You feel very supported. You know that you can count on family. In fact, in my book, there are times where they should have rescued me and they didn't. And in parts of my book, I do explore that where they let me down. And I they should have taken better care of me. And it's hard. It's hard to acknowledge that. But yeah, military family, it's very unique. So, and not always the healthiest.
Yeah. I can definitely attest to that. My father was in the military, and also in Texas, and just a lot of what you mentioned in the book, I could absolutely relate to 100%. So yeah, it's not always the healthiest, but I'm glad that you're at a point where you're able to recognize they should have taken better care of me and that you were let down, because that is a big step to even realize. Because a lot of the time we learn, oh, you can't question family. You can't question this behavior. You just have to look the other way.
Yeah. So all the names in the book are changed. Caldwell is my maiden name. It's my family name, but all names have been changed. But my family knows about the book. My uncle, the one who said that he would kill his father if he ever saw him again, I actually sat down with him and did an interview. because we don't talk about our past. And he agreed to it. And it's actually, I transcribed it and it's on my website as
Mhm.
well. But at the end of the interview, he said, you know, I know you're writing this book, but I want you to keep it out of my house.
Mhm.
So they know that it doesn't always portray them in the kindest light, because they did they did let me down on several occasions. So yeah, he told me not to bring the book around. And I was grateful to him for just being willing to do the interview. So my grandfather was schizophrenic, and he started telling my grandmother that the the two boys, the sons, should have sex with their sisters and their mother, and that the daughters should be having sex with him and with the brothers. So just complete insanity. And my mother was sexually abused by her father. And I asked my uncle, I said, my grandmother, she came from an adopted family. They were wealthy. She went to and graduated from college in the 50s. A woman in the 50s. She was actually salutatorian of her class.
Wow.
And I asked him, I said, when all of this was happening, why didn't she go to her adoptive family and get the children out of this situation where the father is sexually abusing my mother? And my uncle didn't know the answer. And talking about my mother's sexual abuse, I asked him, I said, do you think my mom let it happen to her so that she could protect her younger sister from it?
Mhm.
And that's what I think happened. That my mother went along with it to protect her little sister. And my grandmother should have done something and didn't. So talk about failing as a family.
Yeah. Growing, it's a lot, and I'm so sorry that that's something that you've had to be around, and even your mother as well. It is horrific. Absolutely.
It is.
The story gives, I think, families, people, especially people who eventually, if they want to, decide to have a family. I do think a lot of these stories provide the reality that doing what we think is right in terms of either ignoring it or pretending that it's not happening or choosing one way of survival because we think that that's going to maintain that survival. Just the fact that there are better ways to do things, and there are ways that, even though they might be difficult and uncomfortable and hard, it is healthier for whoever is involved. And it shouldn't be like this. And it doesn't have to be like this. I think more and more that we talk about this stuff, the more it shows people this should not and will never be allowed to happen in any. I think the internet doesn't want me to talk.
It's all right.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Let's kind of move maybe forward into your journey into motherhood and embracing motherhood. Um, you've written about wanting to be free of life at one point, right? Suicidality and the journey of that, your experience of that. Um, what was the shift like for you now to be a mom, to live the life that you're living? And do you feel that there are still moments in your life where you struggle with accepting life or accepting what happened in the past?
So no, I've come to terms, but becoming a mother, so in my psychiatric evaluation, you'll read that I have or had an early onset reactive attachment disorder. I didn't bond with people. I experienced losses and witnessed traumas that I I don't bond with people the way other people do. Um, and it happened with my daughter. She was born August 7th, and I was so scared that it's even in my second psychiatric evaluation. They quote me as saying, I'm terrified of having children because I'm terrified that I'm going to do to him or her what was done to me. And just that terror of being a mother. So when my daughter was born August 7th, I went back to drinking, and my my husband, her father, his parents were over, and I told him, I can't do this. I can't raise her. I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I'm incapable of this. Take her, take our daughter, go with your parents and raise her. And I would just cry and drink. And on November 8th, I woke up in the bathroom on the floor. I had passed out on the bathroom rug. And November 8th was the day that I decided that I was going to be her mother and that I was going to give her the childhood that I did not have. And that is when I made the decision to move forward into that journey. She was unexpected. I didn't even believe that I could get pregnant. I had health issues. I didn't think it was even possible. But August 7th to November 8th was me telling my husband and his parents, take her, raise her. I can't do it. And November 8th was the day I made the decision. It's also my sobriety date. Um, November 8th, 2005. That's the day I chose to be her mother. Now, she hasn't had the perfect childhood that I wanted for her. Her dad passed away. My husband passed away when she was 10 years old. And it kills me that she has had to go through that. But she has had a life that I am proud that I was able to give her what she was able to have. And it wasn't perfect. I made so many mistakes, but um, I am incredibly proud of my daughter and who she is today. And in fact, she asked me with respect to the book. She said, "Mom, I don't want to read your book. I don't want to know all of the things that happened to you. Is that okay?" And I said, "Of course. Of course it's okay." And just the compassion that she has for me, that's a testament. And I completely understand her not wanting to know all the bad things that happened to me. And in a way, that's me protecting her innocence.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. It's definitely a testament, you know, when you raise a smart, intelligent, compassionate daughter, that you did a great job. And we're all not perfect people. We can't be perfect parents, but you're doing a fantastic job. And the fact that you took that step again and you're like, no, I'm going to try, I'm going to do it for her, for me, and give her a better life. You're incredible. I'm trying very hard not to cry because I find you so profound and so strong and so brave, and I admire you so much. It's just, you're doing a
God,
fantastic job as a mother. I do have to say that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If you're not careful, you'll make me cry.
I'll cry. Uh, but all right. I would like to ask you, being a mom, how has that role been for you so far? Is there something that you wish you, I don't want to say be better at, because I think it's all, life is complex and we're complex human beings, but what is the role like for you being a mom, after everything you've witnessed as a child, you being in this position now and giving the life that you've given your daughter? What does it feel like? Has it healed a part of you? Do you feel more complete? Is there something that you understand better now being a mom than you did when you were a child yourself?
Yes. So, my mother, when I was 12 years old, my brother was 3 years old, she relinquished her parental rights. I had a best friend. It was sixth grade. had a best friend. She came from an upper middle class. Well, they were very affluent, actually. Um, and my mother recognized that she was unable to give my brother and me the kind of life that my best friend's family was offering. And I didn't realize until about 8 years ago, I had this it it epiphany where I realized that my mother made the greatest sacrifice a mother can make. She gave up her children. She gave us to another family to raise us because she knew that she couldn't do it. She was unable to offer us the type of life that she wanted for us. And now, as a mother, that is the most selfless and most substantial sacrifice. She, all of her feelings as a mother, I recognize now the love that it took for her to put herself second and to put us first and to give us that opportunity at that life. And I, it, as I was going through my childhood and my adolescence with my mother, I was very angry with her and I did not understand, and very angry at the situation. Why did I have a crazy mother? Why did I have in fact, I used to be grateful that I didn't have a father. And after beatings, she would send me to go take a shower, and I would just cry and ask God why he had done this to me. And I would also thank God for only giving me a mother. And it never occurred to me that having a father could actually be a positive thing. Throughout my childhood, that's just never how I saw it. And um it hasn't been until I became a mother myself that I realized the sacrifices that my mother made for us. And she, in my opinion, made the ultimate sacrifice. So, and it's now understanding that she was sick, that she didn't have the help or the support that she desperately needed. And ultimately, she did receive. I had no contact with my mother from 12 years old to 22. And when she was relinquishing her parental rights, we were at, Children's Protective Services offices, and my mother was in the next room signing away her rights. And the caseworker asked me multiple times, "Are you sure that you do not want to see your mother?" And I was so angry with her that I refused. And A decade later, I started to get curious about her, what had happened to her, because we knew nothing. She left and she was gone. And I found her and I was able to visit her. And I no longer needed her to be a mother figure for me. My Aunt Rose filled that role. And in fact, I say, God didn't give me a mother and a father. He gave me two mothers. So my mom and my Aunt Rose. Um, but yeah, it's been an incredible journey. And I got to have a reconciliation with her where she had received help. She had a social worker. She was on medication. She had a government apartment that had furniture. She of course unable to work, but she was happy. She sat in her apartment and smoked her 2 packs of cigarettes a day and watched her Judge Judy. And I got to see that she was doing well. She was thriving. And I'm the only person in the family that got to see that. Um, where in Houston, she was in El Paso, which is an 8-hour drive across Texas at very high speeds to get there in 8 hours. Um, and unfortunately, her brothers and sister didn't get to see her um, the way that I did. They didn't have that reconciliation, and they didn't get to see how well she was doing. And it helped me greatly having the opportunity to get that closure.
What do you most hope that readers will carry with them while reading or finishing your book? And are there any words of encouragement or advice for anybody who may be going through the same thing that you went through?
Sure. I want my readers to know that they have more power and more control over their lives than what they may realize. And that choosing every day to get up and to face those struggles, to go through those battles, that it's a decision. And as I mentioned before, life changes and can change in very short spans of time. And to recognize the power and authority that you do have, even if you're not in control of making your life decisions, you're in control of how you react to your situation. You're in control of how you view yourself and your responses to your situation. So it, it's really, I would love for my readers to to recognize their own power, to really come through it and see that, okay, I don't get to control my living situation. I don't get to control this or that happened, but I do get to control how I respond to it. I do get to control whether I decide to self-medicate, to drink, to do drugs, whether I decide to continue making my life situation worse, or whether I'm going to make those hard decisions and face what I'm going through and make decisions that put me in a position to take advantage of future opportunities, that they have more control than they realize, even if it's just mentally how they approach their situation.
That's beautiful. Is there anything else you would like to share before we close up?
Well, um, on your questions, you ask if I have any thoughts or guidance for anyone who's feeling suicidal or struggling, and it would be to know that you are not alone. I mean, for heaven's sake, read the book. read the book, you'll see that I've been there. I know what it's like to desperately want to end your life because of the pain that you are going through. And I would ask that they reach out to somebody, anybody, if it's a friend, if it's an authority figure, whether it's, I'm not sure what you have in Australia, but here we have wannatalkaboutit.com. There are resources. You do not have to go through what you're going through alone. You are not alone. There are people who have gone through what you've gone through and have come out the other side. I'm one of them. And just please open yourself up, be vulnerable, take that chance, reach out, because you're not alone and you don't have to go through it alone.
Absolutely. Adrienne, thank you so much for sharing your story with us again, and coming onto our podcast and writing your book, everything. Thank you for everything and being so open and vulnerable and authentic. It really is incredible and amazing. And for all our watchers and all our listeners, Adrienne's book, Unbroken, Life Outside the Lines, will be available December 1st on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Google Books. You can also learn a lot more at unbrokencaldwell.com. Everything will be linked down in the description below. And as Adrienne said herself, if you or someone you know is struggling with trauma, suicidal thoughts, abuse, please know that you're not alone. We'll include support resources down below. And let's keep on talking about it. Let's keep on connecting with each other and realizing that we're a community and we can build that community, and you're not left on your own devices. There are a lot more people in the world who are willing and able to hold you and carry you and help you get better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was beautiful.
Thank you. And thank you again as well, Adrienne, for coming on.
Ladies, it's been a privilege. I feel like the conversation that we've had today, I feel like it's going to matter to some of your listeners, your audience. I feel it.
Yeah.
So thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Until next time.
Until next time.
Bye.